So it gives me a lot of pleasure to introduce our inaugural reader for our second season, Dr. Joseph A. Soldati. Dr. Soldati has published in numerous periodicals, scholarly magazines, journals, and anthologies. He also received the 2000 Poetry Prize from Flying Machines for his poem Moon on the Wing. He's the author of a scholarly book, Configurations of Faust, a book-length poetry collection, Making My Name, and the co-author of a bilingual volume of poems which are available back here for sale, O Poetry, O Poesia. Poesia. He is the former chair of the Board of Trustees of the Friends of William Stafford, now retired. He is Professor Emeritus of English at Western Oregon University and the recipient of numerous honors and awards for teaching and scholarship. So would you join me in welcoming our reader tonight, Dr. Joseph A. Soldati.
This is one of those singular honors that may eclipse some of my former ones. I want to thank Tom. One of the nice things about being invited to read, I've gotten to know Tom a little bit, and what a fine man he does. Tom, you and your staff, Grady and Joe and Pat and City of Milwaukie and Leading Library people, we are in debt to all of you. As I was telling, I think, Pat, when I came in, poets love these kind of things, and as Paul Ann said, it's unusual to have such a fine venue. Of course, remember that poets should read in a garbage dump, and usually have. This is, I'm going to start out first with a little poem that's not too recent, but there's a line in that will be the title of my next collection. A poem is words you have a way with and can get away with, including the words that got away and never returned. First couple of poems I'm going to read are fairly recently published poems, in no particular order except the very first one, which just got accepted in the Litchfield Review back east. I think I'm known better on the East Coast than on the West Coast. It's called Writing This Stuff. And those of you who write will understand this poem. This poem will hit home. The business of trying to say what you mean so that even if no one gets it, you still profit, as if you had found a dime on the sidewalk. Yet I'm still at it, stuffing bits of verbal tinder into the firebox, waiting for a blaze of light and heat, wanting to get going. Writing poetry is fishing without bait. When I do snag something, it's usually unkeepable and inedible, enhancing neither page nor plate. I want a minestrone of metaphors, not alphabet soup, and lines that parallel, are arc parabolical, veer tangential, yet meet in their all together. I want assonance that aspires to express, that aspires before it expires, a soft breath or whisper in a phrase to mute the clang of consonants. That is, I want music, not the din of the bin being banged by the dumpster. Even now, I have trouble staying on track. Writing a poem is like trying to start a train. All the words have to have their brakes off if the damn thing is to move at all. I took my love of mowing. Now don't let your mind go too far with this. One misty morning, I took my love a mowing the city's great park silvered with dew. She rode beside me on the tattered tractor seat, her hips and thigh warm against mine. She wore my old army jacket and my blue baseball cap. Still she smelled like herself, rousing up from sleep. Ever-widening lanes of cut grass, our wake a splendid aroma, turned ocean dark behind us. Did we hear the blades rattle and the old engine bawl, or smell the rancid exhaust? I don't recall. Around the great lawn we drove, circumference ever smaller, as down into a vortex, and found our green center. One of the most startling things about, hold your applause for Paul Ann, please. One of the startling things about the capture of Saddam Hussein in Iraq in this misguided war was that, and this is from news reports, in the days before he was executed, Saddam Hussein writes poems and shares them with friends, with visitors. It's a true story. So, this is called Poet Hussein. As the words come to you, which ones do you choose? Which reject? Surely martyr comes to mind, and leader of the people, slick, ready-made terms from the liar's lexicon, but not tyrant, not murderer, not fool. Perhaps servant of God gives you peace, so at night you won't dream the mantle of sadness covering Iraq like dust, of Tikrit, where orphans crouch in doorways of Baghdad's markets of maimed bodies. Has poetry and art of the infinitely real and imaginary come to you in time? You press your pen so hard against the paper that the words can't pour. A new experience for you. Desiring salvation, perhaps you would resolve the past with words marvelous and fantastic, become as free as any poet. But how turn fields of slaughtered Kurds into idyllic pastures? Here now is anguish, the imprisonment of language when getting the words out seems impossible. Unlucky. Change of pace. I suppose playing card games is a good way to make, even keep friends. My mother played bridge with the same women for 50 years, and they always spoke civilly to one another. But card games have never worked for me. My thick paws can't make a neat fan, much less keep the cards in some sort of sequence. The game stops while I retrieve cards from the floor. Don't think I don't notice the glares. I have no poker face. I grin when I have a good hand and pout when I'm dealt trash. To me, the rules are Byzantine. Trump, no Trump, raises my depression. Mother went to her grave knowing I was a failure because I never learned how to play bridge. A woman I could have loved forever played pinochle with neighbors on Friday nights. She tried to teach me. We folded in 2 months, and I wonder if she still discards suitor after suitor. Poetry is just playing around. I just play it. Next year I'll grow up and get serious. I had a great English teacher in high school. Her name was Evelyn Baker, and this is called Remembering Miss Baker. Evelyn Baker, now enthroned in the pantheon of great English teachers, stood straight as a declarative sentence in front of our class. Not uncomely, but not beautiful, yet not without form. She was slim, maybe one size up from petite, a proper noun without modifiers. Every day she wore a long-sleeved blouse buttoned high at her throat to cover a vivid birthmark that to her must have burned like a brand. I was embarrassed to have seen it once. Teaching with chalk or book in one hand, she covered her neck with the other, letting it fall away as she turned to the board. For her, but mostly with her, we struggled with books and words until they became friends. She taught us Beowulf, which in our North Carolina high school became Beau Wolf, and made her smile. Even more than her students, she loved words, teaching them by root, prefix, suffix. So we learned every anthro and gen word in existence, every prefix in the universe, ambi through mis to para to trans, every suffix, feel and phobe that gave a noun character. For Miss Baker, I would have become a misanthrope, never a misogynist, have remained a bibliophile. It seems that she loved trans words the most, perhaps because she seldom traveled, but she got them across to us. Now, whenever I traverse an ocean, I think of her and hope back then that she had a lover, someone beside her Tex and Lexus who pronounced his love faithfully as Juliet required of Romeo, who in evenings would watch her read our clumsy prose, shaking her head and wondering at the lives we had ahead of us. I don't know if Evelyn Baker is the reason I'm up here tonight, but maybe in a funny way she is, along with a good dozen other people. The landfill is a fetid Walmart of goods tumbling off trucks, great mountains whose veins of defeated wealth the poor mine with their hands. Human plunderers, they dodge the bulldozers that push and plow the mountains under, compete with the gulls and ravens, all diving into the wasteland, the debris of our city. So much rotting food, so much a civilization's detritus, the cracked cups, stained sofas, broken radios, old stoves without oven doors, dead dogs and faultless dolls, anything that is unwanted or no longer loved. It's a happy one. Some of you are saying, that got published. I sent out to a lot of pessimistic magazines. Sent out a poem the other day, came back, sent it to another editor, immediately called me up and said it made me cry. Which means, of course, that the ink will run, it won't get published anyway. So. I have experiences like that. I was once rejected by an editor who said my poem sounded too much like Shakespeare. Whew. I've never been accepted with higher praise. So if you write like Shakespeare, you'll get rejected. You know that the world's going to be a rough place. This is called Perspective, the Sistine Chapel. You all know where that is. I thought I knew the stories, but here God reaches out to an already smug Adam who, offering only a finger, frees himself from God. Adam and Eve, torn from their earthly delights, hounded from the garden they didn't have to tend, seem annoyed, not ashamed. A gigantic Jonah sits beside a fish much larger than himself, hardly Leviathan, more like a grouper he will eat for supper. God in their ears, Ezekiel and Jeremiah call for destruction, preach rubble and ash for Jerusalem. I flew from there yesterday. Now, the second shortest part of the program, I do a few translations. I'm going to ask my friend Jan Barrows, the novelist, author of a wonderful book you've got to read called Jose Builds a Woman, to read the Spanish, because my Spanish is really rusty. So Jan, if you would read these 2 poems in the Spanish. You might say the titles in English.
You want me to read them first and then you'll do both of them in English together? Or,
Yeah, go ahead. Read the first one, then I'll do the translation,
and then the second one.
it's just things that I translated.
Dos poemas. El agua debajo del árbol. Can you hear me? El agua debajo del árbol. El árbol debajo del cielo. Al cielo debajo de ti. Las cosas sobre la tierra. Mi pensamiento sobre las cosas. Tu sobre mi pensamiento.
It's called Water Beneath the Tree, and the author is Marco Antonio Corcura. Water deep beneath the tree beneath the sky beneath you. I think about all the things on earth, thinking about you.
It's beautiful. Debajo del árbol. This is the second one. Debajo del árbol, oteo la rama, corazón tendido como una baraja. Debajo del árbol, la sombra se duerme, corazón tendido sobre la corriente. Debajo del árbol, sombra, hierba y agua, corazón tendido como una baraja.
Thank you, Jan, very much. Same author. Under the tree. Only the limb can see under the tree, heart spread like a fan of playing cards. The shade sleeps under the tree, heart spread upon the flowing stream. Shade, grass, and water under the tree, heart spread like a fan of playing cards. It's a surprise. I didn't write this poem. A far better poet than I wrote this poem. It's called Manifesto. The author's right here. It's Paul Lance. I translated it into Italian. I'm going to read it in English first, and then just because I do translations, you just hear it. I will say this, knowing the Italian language a little bit, Paul Ann's poems are just open for translation. Beautiful English, beautiful Italian. There's something to that. The thing is, Ezra Pound said a good poem is a good poem in any language if it's a good poem. And by the way, you can hear poems in Chinese, and if they kind of ring, even though you don't know a word, you can kind of tell. Of course, it's hard to speak a poem through those masks. This is called Manifesto by Paul Ann Peterson. It's from her book, Animal Bride. There is a thing or two I know. To speak the story as it unfolds, to sleep with the animal dark and breathing against my face, to remember my heart can do only this: give and take and give what is never its own. Actually, I chose this poem because it's the same thing in Italian, the title anyway, Manifesto. Io so una cosa o due, dire la storia come si svolge, dormire con l'animale, scuro e respirando contro mia faccia, ricordarmi che mio cuore può fare solo questo, offre e ricevere ed offre sempre, che non è mai un suo. Just heard Pauline present a poem the other night that she's working on, and I said, I want first translation rights. I can see the translation already. These are recently written, recently revised poems. One or two are really old, but most of them are very new. This is brand new. You were there with Pauline when I read this the other night. I'm doing a series of poems of lullabies, actually, and these are lullabies, and I've finished two, I think. Uh-oh. It's the thought police. Lullabies. For the homeless at the mission. Now as evening descends and the smoke of your last cigarette lingers in the cough-filled air, rest easy on the crude bunk. In clothes not washed for weeks, sleep sweetly tonight. As you curl yourself into the you before you were born, may any dreamt of angel clasp you as warmly as the blanket around you, and the burdens weighing you down be lightened as the hours darken. This one is for soldiers arriving at the war. Tonight you disembark, lugging your duffel and rifle down the ramp to step onto that blistered land. The stars are with you, perhaps brighter than you have ever seen them. At home, the forested mountains rising above the sea, the valley of singing streams await your return. Tomorrow, remember that the sun, however harsh, never fails you, that the gentle moon endears you. Yes, I know there are at least 2 Vietnam vets here, myself and my friend Larry. We identify with men in Iraq right now, too. It's called Insomnia, Italian style. We don't always sleep well, as you think. And all the Italian words in this poem are place names for the most part. So. That cool place on the pillow where no head has lain is mine. I'm awake, standing in the dark by the window. 4 o'clock, the morning shudders against the wind and the rain. The blue and yellow train stops at Campo di Giove. Fields and forests meet us at the station. We drink mountain water, bask in June sun, then go on to Carpinone, where we can't dine. It's Sunday. The trattorias and grocery stores are closed until Mass is over. One swan glides across a dark green lake near Scano and Abruzzo. where on a mountain we meet an old woman huddled in black and her white dog tending sheep in the rain. On an undulating walk in Venezia, a sailboat drawn in colored chalk, tricolor flying, heads up the Giudecca, prowl eastward for the Adriatica. In Campania, at Scalo above Amalfi, we can always see the sea. Here someone leaves spaghetti on the stairs for feral cats that cower when we pass by. A gray stone house leans over a sunlit lane, red geraniums framed in a window. A hand closes the shutter just as we reach the house. Since we're in Italy, we'll just stay in Italy. This is a very recent poem. Livy, my sister, and I were in Italy this spring on a rainy day in Murano, which is the island where they make glass in Italy, and off Venice. A few words here, and I tried to put some things into English, but it just doesn't work. One word is, or a phrase is pane pescatore. That's literally fisherman's bread. It's kind of a hard, sweet, semi-sweet bread. Weighs about as much as a small shot foot. It's usually eaten at breakfast time. It was taken out on boats by fishermen. It's kept all day. There's a Venetian dish called sarde in sour, which, okay, it's sardines in oil, but if I wrote sardines in oil, you'd think of those things that came in a can. This is about, sarde in sour is about as close to one of those canned tin sardines as, say, Moby Dick is to a little goldfish. And farfalla, you know the pasta there. At the end of the poem, two words, maybe three. Vitro di trina is a lacework kind of a glass, very delicate, blown. Furnaces are fornace. And the man who does the glass blowing is called a soffiatore. Glass blower didn't quite work in the poem. Besides, soffiatore, you know, you go up to somebody and say, soffiatore. And she'll say, yes. Or as I say, you can read medicine bottles in Italian and it sounds like a love poem. You know. Rain in Murano. The day begins with a white-hooded cappuccino, celebrant of mornings, and a dense hunk of pane pescatore that I break and dip into the sweet cumulus atop the black hole of coffee. What rain? Though it falls like the tropes of unlucky poets not in Italy this spring, those who will not be joining me to drink a bottle of crisp Soave or to dine on sarde and sour and farfalle with salmon. I can barely see Venice across the lagoon, and the footbridges that cross the canals of this little town are slick, my steps cautious. I could fall and break something here on Italy's glass isle. Too wet for my notebook and pen in the piazza, and with no desire to seek the lee side and read Virgil in my room, I wander brilliant galleries of vitro di trina, so fragile that a breath might shatter it all. Then visit the fornace to watch a soffiatore hold a dazzling nova on his pipe before he blows the white-hot star into a warm sun. So Libby and I are in Europe. We finally end up in Berlin, went to the Alt Museum. And there's this painting, a painter I've just gotten to know a little bit, been reading about him, named Arnold Böcklin, 1827 to 1901, to those of you who like dates. The painting is self-portrait with death playing the fiddle. And here's Böcklin, and there's death just sawing away right behind him. That's the title of the poem, too. Ah, so it's you making the background music for my life. I should have known by your repertory as I dance to waltzes, salsas, and gavottes, pizzi, pizzi, pizzicato, sing songs of work and play, presto, of love, andagio, andante, the aubades and even songs, moderato, the melodies now frequently lento, my voice decrescendo. So what now, maestro? Your fingers flayed to bone, pressing the strings against the bridge, your tight wrist and fist fused to the bow. My weary accompanist, bravo! I enjoy our concert. Music for every occasion. All I have to do is keep time. So I'm sitting at my desk one day, and I try to work every day a little bit, and I'm thinking what this world needs is an English poem about dung beetles. So I look up in the great big giant dictionary of poems, and there's nothing on dung beetles. And the dung beetle, by the way, is a scarab. The name of the poem is the Greek word for family of dung beetles, Scarabaeoidea. Unlike Sisyphus, who gets nowhere with his rock, the dung beetle purposely rolls a ball of feces in an unerringly straight line. The dark orb will feed his family for a long time or become a bed to breed in. As Khepri, ancient Egypt's sacred scarab, daily rolled the sun across the horizon into that nether world of night and retrieved it every morning, the dung beetle of forest, desert, pasture, and plain is destined not to fail, for his mate guides him, assists when the terrain ascends, coaches and cajoles. Sometimes he reverses his body, lifts his rear end, and pushes the globe with his hind legs backwards across the earth all the way home. A roustabout in love. A roustabout's a guy who works in a circus. She has everything, brains, body, her way with me, her roustabout in love. In this great circus, I'm acrobat, clown, and elephant. I also put up the tent. Around the ring of our desire, she wheels a whip, and I leap through a circle of fire. We'll follow that with also a brand new poem called Love May Mean You Have to Eat Tofu. I do these little satires. That's what that is. This is a satire. Because it also may tell you the state of my love life, but we won't go into that. New girlfriend said she really liked me, but let me know that she always eats healthy. She means no pizza or barbecue, no catfish or hush puppies fried in bacon grease, or a mountain of nachos at El Cholo. Our first dinner date, the feng shui. She orders a tofu dinner for two, a vegetable medley, gaudy concoction, every color in the spectrum, but mostly white tofu, and green with orange overtones. Earlier, I had thought about love, had visions of our love making a porterhouse we could share. But from the white silk sheets of my fantasy wafts the fusty odor of soy. While above the headboard, a nightmare, Priapus weeping, his erection gone flaccid, as you know what. Envying the couple at the next table, I ogle their platters of crispy duck, spare ribs and oyster sauce, mushu pork, humbao. Hate stares from 3 people, 2 of them strangers. So I ask for a second serving of mélange à tofu, trying not to smile and not to inhale. Could I feign to faint, drag tablecloth and dishes with me to the floor, tofu mashed in the carpet and on my forehead, yet elicit from her both sympathy and later sex as she picks seaweed and bean sprouts from my hair, blots the healthy gravy, no MSG, from my trousers? Or should I end the evening now, this relationship that will never get beyond the sweet or the sour? Those tofu millionaires don't make any money on me, I'll tell you. This is called poem hedonic. I really am a hedonist. And have always sided, as you can see, with the grasshoppers of the world, not the ants. And so this poem is, you know, the old legend, the story. Autumn cools the land. Winter looms beyond the horizon. Ants trek to work, hurry to build havens, fill warehouses. Grasshoppers sing vibrato, dance in fields, dance on lawns. Legends say, if they like you, they will land on your shoulder, inviting you to dance and sing. A curse if you don't, ant. Good morning, clown. Who you fooling without your painted face, red nose, drawn smile, baggy suit, yellow shoes? Every night people guffaw at the gags, your burlesque in the ring, though children often cry when you come near. In the ring of morning's mirror, your private travesty, graying beard, balding pate, dried night drool on your lips bring you close to tears. Time now to paint over your unspeakable life, deceiving white grin, to dress gaudy bright, the red polka dots will do, hopefully hiding everything hideous. I ain't always happy. This is called Prom Night. You've heard this poem before. It's kind of like the tofu. It's another satire. And if you went to school in the 50s, early 60s, you'll know this poem. You were there. You're in this poem. Try not to blush. Prom night. After the dance, I drove the borrowed Ford to a dark street and parked beneath the sycamores. I think we wanted the same thing, or I thought we did. As she scrunched her shoulders so the straps of her dress fell to her elbows, allowing me, oh God, don't let my hands be cold, to touch her breast, her best offering. Everly Brothers singing Bye Bye Love in the dash light. I wanting to slip my hand between her legs, something I had never done before except in feverish unsleep, already working the dress up, smooth thighs beyond my nylon dreams, had never been so far so quickly, oh sacred panties of the fair lane, had never held my breath for an hour until tonight. Kathy's clown. Then wake up, little Susie. The fireflies have shut down their little lamps and gone to ground. I began to breathe again, but had trouble getting out of the car, walking her to the door as if nothing had happened, which, in truth, was the lamentable truth. Some of you remember the 50s. And if you don't, just buy an old Bob Everly Brothers record and album, it'll come back to you. Figure study. No nudes lie supine on the grass near the park bench where I write in my notebook. Nor later do they drape languorously before me as I stroke the keyboard. With no models lolling about and thus no body in the ink, my poems begin with a sigh as I conjure up a landscape, smooth the horizon's line, perhaps add a figure or two, and freeze the instant in time. Like a painter, I interpret space, convert a moment to forever before the words take a break. For principal focus, I caress images, expose their sensuality, add color to the afternoon sky, heighten the allure of flesh, pigments of my imagination, as if I were writing to you. Probably one of the best friends I ever had in my life, a guy named Ken Oliver, has Lou Gehrig's disease. And this poem is called Lou, and it's for Ken. In the final game of 2,130 consecutively played, his shadow and the babe's converge at last, dying from the disease that will forever wear his name. He sights on the ball, sees it, reads Spalding through its white-red kaleidoscopic twirl, and knows it will break his heart because he cannot catch up to its breaking away from him. Even with 17 untreated fractures in his hands, he played. Now those hands are numb to the bat, to glove and ball. His feet can't feel the ground, find the base. His legs unable to stretch toward the easy throw from the pitcher. The play today made so needlessly close that he takes himself out of the game. Alone, he slumps on the bench, the shadow of the dugout never so dark, or the ball field so bright. More baseball. Jesus in a baseball cap. This is after a painting by a friend of mine named Jim Mattingly. I remember Jesus as a guy who batted .240 and often missed the cutoff man from right field. He was someone to go to a ball game with, who liked to lean back, put his feet up on the chair back in front of him and sip a few beers. He also liked to eye the girls in tank tops standing behind the visiting team's dugout, but he wouldn't go near them. He already had a girlfriend. Jesus understood the game, its beauty and impending disappointment. He loved its symmetry, the dazzling plays made on the facets of the infield or in the precincts of the outfield, emerald radiant even in August. His real baptism, he told me, came from a fireballing left-handed itinerant preacher who toured the countryside with a scruffy squad of players and preached the gospel after playing and usually tromping local teams on their home fields, in pastures and schoolyards. His fastball, not his preaching, put the fear in me, he said. And his curve broke so sharp, it all but disappeared. Unbelievable. And I knew I was a trespasser in this world of dust and glory, triumph and heartbreak. So we drank our beer and ate peanuts took a piss during the 7th evening stretch, and settling for the 8th and 9th innings, look forward to the fireworks after. It's autumn now. This is a lament in early autumn. The young woman next door has disappeared. Through July and August, she offered her body to the sun, a blessing, mine and the sun's. Oh, the proposals a body can pose. Now where she lay is sadder than my sere garden, outdated and faded in dilapidated planters over which I bend to tend. A tangled melange of lobelia and petunia, the pale, still pungent leaves of basil, the last of the cherry tomatoes, ornaments on the dying vines of summer. It's called The Life of Letters. I do things like this all the time. I got a poem dedicated to the letter L. Kind of a Sesame Street for grown-ups. You know? The Life of Letters. The proboscis of P, the swoop away of J before it strikes the ground, and the twice victorious double V. H, the portal invites me in, home after journeys, a gate I must pass through. I have choices to make at divergent Y. Which road takes me to you? Or else hang the laundry there out to dry. G is gusto, glorious, the way a garden should be. G is gingers bite on the lip, gingerbread and ginger beer. To the music of sinuous S I sway. For its openness I am drawn to see, then to, oh, my astonishment, whenever I touch the bountiful bee. Real change of pace here. Death by drowning. New Orleans, August, September 2005. Just a short few years ago. The panic, your hands desperate clutching, trying to pull the water surface down past you. No horizon, no separation between air and water, only the smothering dark, the water, and no air. A dog wailing from a rooftop. Then, after the frantic struggle, nothing, nothing, nothing. A peace you did not want and can't understand. Slowly now, you float face down in fetid water. Sometimes a tree rakes between your legs. Leafless branches scrape your eyes. Under the relentless sun, your body bloats. The burned skin splits. Flies breed in the sores. In the meandering current, you bump against other bodies, a grotesque greeting and farewell your outstretched hands. You drift by houses and through parking lots, then swirl briefly like a leaf in an eddy against a church, your only salvation, the distant sea. This is called Counting Stars. An iffy poem. I don't know if it works. We'll see. We lay on our backs in the summer's damp grass and counted the stars by the hundreds and thousands, subtracting whenever one fell, a thin parabola of light hurtling out of the sky, an awed hush in the dark when even the crickets and katydids fell silent. We grew up ignorant of astronomers who counted stars in equal earnest for a living, who tabulated a celestial inventory so each star could be traced if ever it wandered and became lost. Light years ago, our tally sheets disappeared with the murmur of summer. Light years ago, our tally sheets disappeared with the murmur of summer nights lying in backyards, attracting chiggers into the embarrassment of crotches. Now, itch-free, stolidly earthbound and upright, we believe we have seen everything there is to see. We have forgotten an evening splendor beneath the Milky Way. Forget now even to look up. That's probably kind of Wordsworth. Just a few more, we're just about. Then I understand there's going to be an audience interaction afterwards, which means that they'll take me out to the pillory outside the lawn. And you'll get your chance to throw rotten fruit and excrement and hurl curses at the. But a few more. This is a true poem published last year in Clackamas Review, Literary Review, under the title Delivery. But I've always called it in light, Hey Diddle Diddle. And the subtitle is, I helped to deliver a calf in Vichatica, Italy. True story. The calf, wet and the color of its mother's milk, finally slid into our hands. We laid it onto the sweet straw as if it were porcelain. In the old barn, our delivery room this hot July morning, the fresh odor of afterbirth, the permanent reek of urine and dung stung our eyes and shortened our breaths. The old cow had had a hard time of it, as had we, having to thrust our arms into her hot womb and turn the calf toward the light. This was my first attempt at reaching into the slick, silken cradle of life, and I had, despite my clumsiness and the blood, come through. Arnaldo, of course, never flinched. He knew the bovine way. From a cranny hidden from the dusty light slanting through the small windows, Arnaldo held up a bottle of 10-year-old Barbera. I thought, if ever I needed a drink, now is the time, expecting some classic comfort, but not for me. Holding the wine under the cow's nose, allowing the vintage bouquet to stimulate bovid brain, the cow to raise her head, Arnaldo tilted the bottle toward the cow, who drank it so fast I saw his hand appear through the green glass. In ecstasy, the old cow rolled her eyes. The new calf sucked greedily. And if you would have told me that a cow would drink a bottle of wine, I would say you were mad. And that's a tradition in the little village where our grandparents were born. When a cow had a birth, they gave it a bottle of wine, and a damn good bottle of wine. It wasn't Night Train or anything like that. Not the stuff that you drink of, it was the... Pauline has a workshop upcoming, and she does, what do you call it, the little associations? When you do your workshop for writers?
Oh, you mean springboards?
Springboards, yeah. I knew it was something made of wood, but I couldn't think of it. Anyway, I was with Pauline. You remember years ago, you and I went out to Wilsonville High School and did a thing with. And she did this. Fortunately, I didn't have to follow her. I came first, but she did this some springboards, and she didn't see me, but what a good idea! And this poem came from a springboard. Of course, when I do a springboard, I usually land in the pool without the water. There's no water in the pool. But this is called carmine, the color carmine. Carmine, and this was, because I think it was a color that you gave the people. This is carmine. Smear of slathered lipstick, blood trickle from the nose, red gets in my head, surprises my eyes. The dust cover of Webster's Collegiate, a checkered tablecloth, Macintosh apples in a white bowl, one maple leaf flat against the windshield on a cold October morning. Sometimes scarlet, sometimes crimson or magenta, tomato sauce, chilies, the setting sun of summer caught in a tide pool, a clarion of carnations, of roses, begonias, verbena, the spreading rosette of a bullet wound. The coat you wore that cold day we walked Seattle's steep streets. Springboard. And there's a little script under it. The era of separate destinies has run its course. That's from a Sinhalese novelist, Cheki Hamidou Kani. The air conditioner hums and rattles the night music for my safe American sleep in my clean, dry bed, and seldom am I disturbed. Along the street, people, my neighbors, sleep on the perilous ground of vacant lots, in shabby hovels or grimy, unfinished villas, the hot air alive with insects, rats rustling in the bushes. The street population has grown. This city, a sanctuary for those who fear or hope. Every day, after a soapy shower, lotions, deodorants, after croissants and coffee, I go to work. Though power outages crash my computer, the water must be purified. The money is damp and smells as if carried in armpits. For water, my neighbors share one standpipe. They have no electricity and hide their money where they can. I avoid those with suppurating cuts and try not to meet the eyes clouded by malaria. I turn away from sad children thin with diarrhea and the many HIV positive who will not be here next year. The night wears on, though I am oblivious to it. The moon rises, disappears, and rain begins to fall. We share only the darkness. I take refuge in my books, my VCR, and the pirated tapes that I buy on the sidewalk near the embassy. The whiter-than-white skin of Nicole Kidman, luminous under the mosquito net that filters my dreams. Finally, I will close with the poem that is on the broadside this evening, called Evening. Evening, with 3 syllables, evening. A slow saying word the mouth hesitates to let go. The evening of twilight smoothing out the dents and spikes of day, smoothing the way a hand stroking your face erases the creases of question and care. Think of a river evening below the cataracts or embanked below the wind swirl, of coals glowing without a flame, of birds that fly without dip or swerve as if they had found a groove in the sky. Think of bread unleavened that will not rise to insistent heat, of a lake ice beneath a snow, the long evening of a sandy shore counterpoised against the sea. Think of how your breathing softens after love, the evening of your body dissolving into air. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Honor me. You can shout curses. Yes, yes, sir.
It's not a question so much as gratitude. 1985, Western Oregon State College, you taught me how to appreciate poetry. And I now teach down at Milwaukie Academy of the Arts, Milwaukie High School, and some of my senior English students are here to meet the man that inspires their poetry.
Yes, thank you. Since you have changed more than I have, what is your name, please, sir?
Scott Walker.
Of course, I remember you, Scott. You were a good student, if I remember.
I was.
Yeah. And you became an English teacher, too?
English and
You
theater.
didn't learn much, did you? Thank you, Scott. That's a nice tribute. And thank you, your students, for coming. I hope I didn't shock you. If I didn't know, I'm sure, as if I could shock a modern-day student. You could stand here and just terrify me, as you probably do your own parents and teachers. And where do you teach now?
Just right down at Milwaukie High School.
Oh, I see, right here, right in your neighborhood. Bless your heart for coming. Thank you. That's a
I
nice.
had just told them about the man, because we're dealing with sonnets and the ambiguity of language in class, and I just told them about this man that inspired me to appreciate poetry. Then I read the newspaper and I said, oh my gosh, he's reading poetry. He didn't know that. So I told them that.
I don't teach you to read newspapers. Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
So now that you know who was in your audience, do you have any ideas about revising the prom?
No, because that is your and my poem. And there are times, as you well know these days, that to think about that is enough. Or it may be is all that we can do.
Always paper airplanes.
I'm sorry?
There's always paper airplanes.
Right, yeah. And also there are things in that poem that one exaggerates. And all poets lie. If you want facts, you go to the
Technical
dictionary. You want truth, poets tell the truth, but they lie doing it. That's the ambiguity. Yes, sir.
I have one question for me and also the students who are here. I have just published my first book of poetry. What would you suggest for people to, in the way of publishing and so forth, and how to get stuff out there?
Well, you'll probably get 1,000 all different answers from 1,000 different writers. I write, and I show things to fellow poets, and I send it in. And I learned years ago from Bill Stafford to keep sending in, and there's no such thing as a minor publication. Bill Stafford would publish his stuff in high school newspapers. How he would do that, he gave that way. Be generous, and whether you get it in the Milwaukie High School Gazette, or if you make it into Poetry Magazine, it's really something. And don't try not to be discouraged, because you're going to be discouraged. I get more. I've got so many rejections for this, like a paper room. But I get accepted too every now and then, and which is nice. Just keep trying. Writing is a lonely endeavor. Can't do it by committee. You can't do it.
Actually, I've gotten quite lucky.
Yeah. Well,
I've already got
congratulations.
mine a book, and I've got it selling in several stores already, and only made it 3 months.
That's wonderful. We all think we ought to be published more, because we all think we have something to say. When we do get published, we say, somebody's listening, somebody's paying attention. Those that don't publish us are just incompetent. That's just I think you have to take it kind of like that. I mean, if you don't take it personally, the smallest lit mag or journal in the country gets about 800 to 1,000 submissions a month, and they can print maybe 64 in a quarterly or something. And I personally enjoy when I have published a few times in the Oregonian, really like that. And I'll tell you why. More people will see that poem or in the Milwaukie paper than we'll see if you put it in Poetry Magazine or anywhere else. And I get letters all the time from, I get letters all the time from people who have seen my stuff in the Oregonian, and I've been in some, you know, respected literary journals. Yeah. But, you know, but if you have a school paper and they publish poetry, try it out. And if you're dating the editor, you probably make it. You know, why not? Come around. For some of you who are students, I've left a card there if you'd like to run a poem by me. But don't send me 1,000 poems, handwritten in Swahili or Greek or something. If you want to send me a poem, I'll be happy to look at it.
But you like translating.
I'm sorry?
I said, but you like translating. You said you like to translate.
Yes, but only in a language that I recognize, in a language that's recognized by the United Nations. I mean, I've done a lot of workshops, high school, and sometimes they just think they're in English. But they all have the rap beat, you know. And I have a poem on that somewhere called An Old Poet's Last Gig or something. All the students want everything to rhyme, don't want everything has to be predicted. So if you're starting out writing, don't look for things that's predictable. Be unpredictable. Say something outrageous rather than something that's already been said. And if you get expelled, when you come back, you can. But yeah, I would, don't be afraid of taking a chance. So that's really what I think Paul agrees with me. You take chances with words, with language. You take chances. You kind of push the envelope. And good rule of thumb: if you've heard it or seen it before in print, don't write it. If it's already been used about 1,000 times. Stay away from the stuff you always see and read. Try to find something fresh. That's hard to do. Read like crazy. Read everything. Read box labels, read cans, read billboards, read books, read other poets, see what's happening, see what's going on. And try to write like somebody else. You won't, but then you'll find your voice eventually. And good luck to you. And if you don't want to become a writer, you don't have to. Readers are more important than writers. And I really believe that. And as long as you respect the language. English is a wonderful language. It's very flexible. We can say almost anything. If you're French, you've got to say it exactly and pronounce it right. We don't care about that in English. I remember the first time, just to admit this, the first time I was in the locker room at Western OC, in the locker room, they were dressing after a tennis match, and I heard this young man say, "We really porked out last night." And I had never heard, this was a long time ago, but I'd never heard pork out ever, and certainly not as a verb. And I thought, wow, this is a great language that we have. English is like, let's pork out. Try to translate that into French or to Italian. It doesn't work.
You taught my tennis class as well now that you
Is that right? That's right. Professor Milwaukie and I, because the tennis coach became ill. And we were the only two faculty members young enough at one time I was young enough who knew anything about tennis, which means for most professors, English teachers means how to hold the racket. And so we...
I got a good serve out of
Yeah. We knew what we were doing, played like tennis.
that. Our final was to play against you.
Is that why you probably beat me?
No, you beat me.
You beat me now. God, I'm going to change the grade to an A+. Did you make the Honor Society ever since? We'll change that. We'll change that. Other comments, questions?
I was just wondering, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I didn't realize we were raising hands. I was wondering if you are familiar with the book, The Adventures of English, which is a book written about English as if it were an individual growing and changing through
I
this.
don't think I've read that book. I don't know that book at all.
I can't remember the author's name, but the title is The Adventures of English. Yes, fascinating book on how English has become the language that it is.
Now, I have read books about the origins and how, I've taken the, grad school, you take all these linguistics and history of English language. And in California, we had medieval and English and how English grew,
Right.
the Latin and the Greek and the Teutonic roots and things.
Latin, Greek.
And once I did, I had to do a paper on the pronoun there, the whole paper, that's what linguists do.
We're going to leave a little time for some refreshments here.
Okay.
Some of Dr. Soldati's books. So there'll be some opportunity if you want to get some books and have that autograph.
Right, that'd be nice. Thank you, Tom, very much.
Lisa Steinman is going to,
Wonderful poet.
Lisa Steinman is going to be here.
Another English teacher.
October 8th.
Pardon?
She's going to be here
Yes.
October 8th. And let's give Dr. Soldati another hand.